Let me get a picture of where I am. I'm next to one of the locks along the Kennet and Avon Canal. Oh, your favourite walk, Neil? Yes, indeed. Let me make a picture. What are we? It's a funny old day today. We've got a bit of blur. Oh, Barnes, come out the shot. Pups, come here. Come on. I don't want the back of a dog. Pups, here. Come on, good boy. Yeah, we've got... Well, the sunshine is vaguely trying to appear here and there, but right. Shutter speed 600, 5.6, ISO 160. There we go. Oh, another one. Dog's back leg just in shot.
When you travel, when your mind expands and your consciousness expands and you look at people, you start to look at them in a very different way. When I hear people talk about the concepts of like poverty and I hear them speak about it without actual compassion or, they're doing charity work, but they're not really engaging with it on an emotional level, I think we'll just go travel a little bit because you will realize the extraordinary privilege you have, and that gives you gratitude, and gratitude gives you everything else.
Absolute spoiler alert, because I'm good at that sort of stuff. Liza Gershman, whose voice you heard there, also says, in about 4 or 5 minutes or so, when I'm out in the world, I think I am my best self, because I am my most open self. It's a quote so good, I'm going to use it twice. Cue the song by Gerald Kenny. Where are we? I've taken a different path. I'm following you, Barnes. You're just going right, are you? Not because you know, just because you can. I'm not quite sure where to go in terms of my little walking in the countryside opening chatty bit, promoting my guest today. Sometimes it's through the trees. Sometimes it's quite easy. Because all I have to say is, well, it's so-and-so, a landscape photographer who's just walked such and such. Ergo, story easier to promote softly. I think of my chat with Liza today as a sort of hors d'oeuvre to perhaps more conversations, because on the one hand, she has this super simple story about how saying yes, when you really could be saying, not quite sure, or no, can open you up to a world of possibility, which is a thread in the conversation I now wish I'd investigated more, actually. And on the other hand, there's this thing about travel that runs through our chat. So I think that yes and travel share a lot of common ground today, with a dabbling of food. But let's take yes first. I've always had a soft spot for an experiment, and this gives me an opportunity to mention the British writer Danny Wallace. I'll leave a link on the show page. He said yes to everything for, is it 6 months or a year? I'm questioning myself here now. He said yes to stuff, basically. When somebody on a bus, I would imagine he must have looked, maybe he had a resting face that day, or was saying no on the phone loudly when somebody said, listen, have you ever thought about saying yes a bit more? And he literally, overused word, took to that, and he said yes to things he'd normally dodge or overthink. And what followed in his experiment of saying yes was a kind of wonderful chaos. He took adventures he'd normally say no to. He made new friendships. He even somehow, quite sure how this worked out, but got himself a nursing degree. But one thing it did, it absolutely shifted how he saw the world and his place in it. And it all came from saying yes. He wrote about the whole thing, and it's in a book called Yes Man, which I've dipped into, but I do know the story reasonably well because I'm sure I watched a series about it. I've certainly listened to countless interviews. And it did lead to a huge yes, because it inspired the Jim Carrey film with the same name. Although, fair warning, the Hollywood version does play it for laughs, really. The real story is quieter, more thoughtful, perhaps a lot more retrospective in terms of life. But saying yes at a moment most of us might say, leave that with me, would you? Or that's not really me. changed the opportunities in Liza's life as well, to such an extent that she became a food and travel photographer. What is not to love about that combination? But despite it being the title of the show, it's actually a reasonably small part of the chat. But nonetheless, I think a very, very important one. And then, where is Barney going? Barnes! He's just got a stick and he's run off with it. Are we walking separately today? Are we apart today? Guys, he's a good, 30, 40, 50 metres in front of me. Go on. Oh well, suit yourself. But then there's the travel part of our chat, which is probably wrapped up in the word yes as well. And equally folded in with that is the opportunity to meet people, to really see people. Which travel, well, that's what travel can do. And I'd like to add to Liza's thoughts about travel by saying that I think travel gives you a creative confidence and a particular curiosity. It's a theme that we've discussed much on the show, I know. You meet and you talk with people you would never otherwise expect to. Because meeting people has this uncanny way of shaping you. Not in a grand, fireworks, explosive kind of way, but in this more gentle, nudging kind of fashion. And often it's not the people you necessarily expect. Not the loud ones with the polished bios. It's the local person who just wants to tell you about their home or their country. It's the stranger that you end up walking beside because you're both lost, you haven't got a clue where you are. Are you looking for the same place as me? Oh yes, I am. Do you know where it is? Not a clue. And for me, over the last 20 years, it's been the wedding guests all over the country and parts of the world that, well, they just weren't on my radar at the start of the day. But by the end, 10 o'clock or whenever, they leave me thinking, well, that was a conversation I wasn't expected to have. I didn't see that coming. Closer to home, for me anyway, my friend Giles, our friend Giles, I like to think, in his Insta stories to the day, he shared a new thing that he's doing where he pitches up in our local town's high street, which he's photographing people in our local town as part of a project called Hometown Stories. He's talked about this before. And this was an idea that came to him only last week. But on the day he did it, he didn't have one moment where he was sat there alone. He pitched up on a bench and he put a sign in front of him which said, "Time to talk," with a question mark. And people came up to him and just started sharing the most extraordinary stories about themselves, following which they posed for a portrait. When I told Sam, she said, "What a fantastic idea." One of those really simple ideas where you think, oh, why didn't I think of that? But that's all about connection, not necessarily about travel, I appreciate. But I've spent a good chunk of my life behind a camera and a microphone, or these days, walking in search of stories and reading your letters. Come on, Barnes, this way. And time again, the thread that stitches those stories together isn't just where I've been or what I've seen. It's who I've met along the path. The people. Because meeting and photographing people, I think it does change you. That experience does widen the lens. I'm proud of that one. So in today's episode, we're talking about the power of saying yes and the unexpected hellos that travel brings you. And the food. A rich ingredient, full pun intended, of Liza's photographic world that invites all this travel. I know, pups. Here we go. Come on.
Today on the Photowalk.
Travel, as you know and as I know, is so vital to who we are as visual creators, as thinkers, because it puts us outside of our comfort zone and it gives us a reflective quality where we can look back onto the place we came from with appreciation. When I'm out in the world, I think that I am my best self because I am my most open self. Working with the camera seemed like a natural extension of me, of my eye, of my hand. My darkroom was my way to have my own meditative thoughts, my own peace, my own tranquility. Could I photograph cocktails for a book? And naturally, and it was a book with a Random House. And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely I can. I had no idea how to do this. I think of food more like a face. somehow it speaks to me like it's a person, a portrait. If this is how you want to make a living where you can guarantee that you can eat, guarantee there's a roof over your head, you have to want this so much that you can't imagine anything else.
That's Liza Gershman, my guest on the show today. Welcome along as we make our photo walks each week, photographically sketchbooking our time together, accompanied by the letters and inspirational stories you send in. And we have some wonderful surprises today, plus talking with special guests from around the world. It's certainly a one-of-a-kind podcast where your letters, your thoughts make the show what it is. I'll peek into the mailbag in a moment for a flavour of today's thoughts, but before that, I'd like to personally thank those who are Patreon members of our community, or extra milers as you're known, because your belief in this show, your desire to keep us walking together week after week is the why and the how of this podcast. I'd like you to know that I never take you for granted. That's why I record an extra show for you each week, and we meet up on Zoom once a month, and you'll hear more about the extra milers later on in the show today. But also, thank you to arthelper.ai, which helps you sell your photos online by making the posts and the mock-ups and all that grown-up marketing email stuff for you. You can try it free for 30 days, the pro version that is, with code Photowalk if you go to arthelper.ai. I have some thoughts about how that could help me later on. Right, on the show today, I have a suggestion. Find something to hold on to right at the start of the letters today. I think you might need it, and your face might end up contorted. Just bear that in mind too. It's all Charles Mason's fault, as you're about to find out. Craig Wilson is making pictures at the top of a fine mountain peak. Paul Friday is wrapping his body up in cotton wool. I think you'll understand why when I read his letter. And Bob Shonkoff, Grand Archivist of Forgotten Sandwiches at 4 o'clock in the morning, has a tale that I think will make the hairs stand up on the top of your head, if you're luckier than me and they weren't all blown away in those 1987 storms. Plus, there's this month's one-word assignment with Dennis Linden. So, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee. Oh, got that. Check. Garibaldi's. Remembered them this week. Check. Walking boots. Check. Have you got some spare film? Maybe an extra SD card. Check. And spare cash for a bacon butty at the end of the path. Check. Let's walk. The letters, the emails and the comments you make and you leave gives our community a real uniqueness. Your thoughts about walking, creativity and photography provides a very welcome respite from the sheer noise of this world at the moment. As together during this show we put some miles under our feet and make a picture or two to remind us of where those footprints were left. Barney has got a great stick. Look at this stick, Barnes. Look. Normally you make some sort of stick noise now, like normally I get a little growl if I'm trying to take away his stick. Eh? Not today. Very comfy with your stick, are you? The email address to the show is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Three, yes, a triptych of quickfire letters stroke comments to start the show. First of all, our friend Mike Miller, who's also on the extra mile today. It's a bit of a blink and miss comment, but I did spot it. He asked, Neil, what is a bacon butty? And since it made its way to the checklist today, I thought I'd better address this one, since bacon butties have obviously not made their way to Milton in Canada land. No, they haven't, pups. So, Mike, this is an easy one. A bacon butty is bacon in a sandwich. Difference being that some of our greasy spoon cafes actually fry the bread bit as well. Really, Neil? That doesn't sound very good for you. No, I don't suppose it is. I tend to steer clear of that version, but that's what a bacon butty is. Next one is from Charles Mason, whose letter I read a couple of weeks back, one about the power of hands in a picture, or hands as a portrait. Because I want to investigate, actually. I do think it's a very powerful thing, hands in a portrait. They are a portrait themselves, as and of themselves. I'm going to investigate that more in forthcoming workshops and adventures, actually, the power of hands. Hi Neil, says Charles. Thank you for the nice presentation of my note and my work on the show page. I listened to it first thing this morning. You do a hell of a job on this podcast. Charles, you were very kind, and I will of course be flagellating myself with a rolled up damp copy of Out of Focus Digest for daring to step outside of my British sensibilities and complimenting myself, even though you said the words. One funny note, says Charles, and by the way, before I read this, you might just find yourself making a sudden, involuntary, squeamish, screwed-up face in horror in a moment or so. So if you're listening to the show while you're shopping with your AirPods in, or you're in a train or something, just bear that in mind for the funny looks you're about to get. I was listening, says Charles, to you talking to Mark Fernley, your guest, about worn-out pants knees. I've gone down on my right knee to photograph for 50 plus years now, and that knee on my pants always wears out first. Last year, I had to have a tendon on that kneecap severed. In order for the kneecap to float. As I've worn all the cartilage off the femur behind the kneecap, I suppose more than wear and tear to the pants. Interestingly, the doctor actually called this photographer's knee syndrome. I'm amazed it's actually a medical thing, Charles, and if you're still hiding behind the nuts and pulses in aisle 4, you can come out now. There's no more medical talk. Ish. Here's a letter from our friend Craig Wilson, along with pictures that will be featured on the show page, of course, for the show today. Hi, Neil, says Craig. I've been playing catch-up on the show, and while climbing Skiddaw, I listened to episode 143 when you interviewed Tim Kinkton about climbing Everest. Now, while I do hike and climb the odd mountain in the UK, I found it totally fascinating. His story and what he had to go through to do such a monumental task, absolutely incredible. And if you add to that, as you know now, because you've listened to the episode, Tim's routine in preparing himself for Everest wasn't quite like many of the people who do climb Everest. You have to go and listen to the episode to find out why. I've listened to the show since the beginning. What, all 483 episodes, or do you mean that one? You're going to need rehab if it's all 483. And I will say, says Craig, that this is my favourite interview to date. Here are a couple of photos from my little walk up Skiddaw. Thanks from Craig. Skiddaw is not little. It's quite large. It's not one I've walked up, Craig. But this looks like a perfect photographer's achievable mountainous dream in some respects, or peak. Is it a mountain or a peak? Before I get in trouble, I looked up some facts. The fourth highest mountain stroke peak in England, Skiddaw, stands at 931 metres, 3,054 feet. For those that speak in old money, beaten only by Scafell Pike, Scarfell and Helvellyn. I think they're all ones that our friend Mally of the Trees has been up. It's one of the easiest big peaks to climb, despite its height. The ascent is relatively gentle from Keswick, making it a go-to for those wanting a big view without too much of a scramble. It apparently can get very... Come out there, pups, don't go in there. You just had your groom and you've gone into all that green water. What are you doing? It can get very windy up top, apparently. Skiddaw's exposed summit is a bit of a wind tunnel. There's even a wind shelter that's built from stones at the top. You'll probably want it, I think. But it does offer one of the finest views in the Lake District. From the top on a clear day, you can see over to the Scottish mountains, the Isle of Man, and across much of the North Lakes, including Derwent Water and Bassenthwaite Lake, which for pub trivia is the only lake in the Lake District. All the rest are waters. I'm sure we've said that before. It's called a linguistic oddity. Right, so there we go. Pin in the map for photographers anywhere in the world planning to visit that part of the world. Super pictures, Craig. They are definitely on the show page. And, there's one more fact, actually. I missed this bit. Just one more thing. Skiddaw hosts the Skiddaw Fell Race once a year. Now, this is a reason I might like to go and photograph it. 9.6 miles, dash up, dash down, as they say, which starts and finishes in Keswick. I suppose that's for those who think walking up a hill like that isn't quite painful enough. Just referring back to the pants mention for a moment. Did we do this complaint? It looks familiar to me, although maybe it's just something in my mind, but this one flooded in. If I've done it, sorry, but while we have pants on our mind, from Chris Cannon, please ask Neil. Oh, I know, this was sent via Neil from IT. Can't remember why now. I think I might have said that last time as well. Please ask Neil to refrain from talking about pants whilst walking about the English countryside. I can't remember which recent-ish episode it was, but it took me just that little bit too long before I realised he was talking Americanese. One of the most endearing things about the show is your Englishness compared to the multitude of other offerings. An opinion shared by many worldwide, I believe, and I'm sure those using the American land's version of English are in the know enough to know what's what. What? What? That's very English. Blimey. Blimey crikey, O'Reilly. Bring me my cricket box. You can look that one up. Anyway, ahead of the first part of my interview today with Liza Gershman, do you mind if I take another Lakes story with a picture? Oh, go on, Neil. I know we have an audience on all four corners of this fine globe, but if I do this story now, it'll kill, if you pardon the phrase, two birds with one stone. I don't like that phrase. Can we not think of a nicer one? So in the two birds, or on the two birds tone or theme, reason number one. Remember, I was asking for letters from the UK on this occasion. Inventive, creative ones with your stories of the walks that you take with your cameras, with the promise of a pair of fine Lover walking boots at the end of it for top creativity entered. Well, we've got a good few stories to read over the next few months, but this following one is the winner of the Lovers. I wish you could all win them. Honestly, I do. I really, really, really do. And the second good reason for doing this right now is that I can share another picture from the Lake District, as I said, in a way that almost suggests that we did indeed meticulously plan this. The picture is on the show page today, and the letter is from our friend Paul Friday, who very soon is going to have his very own spin-off show, I think. Can I do any more verries? Stuff does seem to happen to you, Paul, doesn't it? It really does. So accidents happen, he says at the start of the letter, and since misery loves company, accidents can repeat like a dodgy kebab. Last Easter, I had a bit of an accident, says Paul, and I snapped. Oh, here comes another wincing moment. Quick, screw your faces up. And I snapped. Oh, an Achilles tendon. Does it make a noise, Paul? The treatment involved tying the loose... Oh, no. The treatment involved tying the loose ends together and wearing one of those large plastic welly boots for 5 months. What are you trying to do to us today? Me and the gracious half, I like that. Me and the gracious half like to go walking, so that put paid to our summer plans. But then the gracious half also had an accident and cracked a vertebrae. So she was in a body brace and even less mobile than me. Cue much hilarity and great inventiveness as the pair of us tried to take care of each other. Thank goodness for friends and neighbours and home deliveries. Finally, the time came when we could try a bit of walking, so we went off to the lakes. The poor dog, our dog, had got used to a lifestyle of sofa surfing, so while we were nervous about our physical abilities, he was trying to hide when the lead came out. But walk we did. We did a whole 4.5 miles around Buttermere on the flats with lots of stops to allegedly admire the view, but really just to check in with each other if we continued or retreated. The last mile, well, that was hard going, but there was the promise of tea and cake at the end, and nothing inspires forward motion like cake. We were back in the game. We had a credible spattering of mud on our boots, and it felt good to limp into the cafe looking like we'd just run over the tops to get there. It's roughly now a year on, and we're nearly back to where we were before all this nonsense. The holidays this year will be Askerig, providing none of us falls off anything before then. Oh, the dog still hates us. Paul, that's a fabulous letter. And a picture to go with it. The only problem is that you can only win one pair of boots. So I don't know how this is going to work. The gracious half will have to wear the left, you can wear the right. And we can tie your two legs together like you're a walking version of a three-legged race or something. The picture, by the way, stunning. Buttermere is now also on my lakes list. Another place to visit. I do love, and you know me, I love scale in photographs, and the two people you placed in the picture to give this place real majesty, size, scale is absolutely perfect. It really is. Thank you for that. Right, this week's guest, Liza Gershman. Now, Liza is an award-winning photographer, an author of 19 books. I think it was 19. I'm stopping myself mid-sentence now. I'm not sure the numbers tally up. Look at me awkwardly if that figure changes in the next few moments in our chat. Pups, come away from there. No, that's the water. No, away, out. I'm doing Liza's introduction here. Have some decorum. She's a creative director whose lens has captured the soul of cultures across more than 55 countries, from the vibrant streets of Havana to the serene vineyards of Napa Valley. Her work brings together the threads of travel and cuisine and that thing we were talking about, human connection. Her books, including County Fair and Cuban Flavor, have been celebrated by Smithsonian Magazine and National Geo, hello, respectively. And in this episode of the Photowalk and this particular chat with Liza, you'll hear how her passion for storytelling has really shaped her personal path, and just a few of the insights that she's gathered along the way, with more, as I suggested, to come in the future. Here's Liza Gershman, Part 1. Liza, let's do our where does it all start from question. That seems a good place to start. I feel we should have a special gong actually in this studio that sounds every single time a family member is mentioned. And I think would be sounding it for you, because I think there's a family connection, isn't there, with your photography?
Oh, there's not, but that's a really good question. Interestingly, there is a connection with the cinema. My great uncle, Marshall Wallens, was the script supervisor on all of the John Wayne movies and all of the big classic musicals that we know and love, like South Pacific and
see, that's where I thought the connection was. I thought that was the connect. I thought I was being clever there, but not very.
Well, that is my. I did grow up visiting him in Los Angeles, and when I was very young, before Universal Studios had an amusement park like they have now or anything official, he was working on a motion picture at Universal Studios, and I was very young, and it had a huge impression on me. He took me to the back lot, and we drove on a golf cart around, and we went into the prop house, and I was mesmerized. Yeah. And we went into the costume house, which was, like a mini Costco-sized warehouse of costumes, and I think that changed my entire life and set me on the course of who I am today. And it certainly is the reason why I went to college for undergrad in Los Angeles, because I just loved the magic of motion pictures. And even though I took that and became a stills photographer, it still got in there. And really, yeah. I think a lot of my work is a bit theatrical at times. I'm always styling things. Props are really important to me. I kind of have my own mini prop warehouse, if you will. And, a lot of my work has been cookbooks, and I do all of the styling for them. And so I think that carried through. So you intuitively nailed that. Well,
you probably had the most authentic version of a theme park that a young lass could possibly ever dream of.
I agree.
You were in the real place doing the real thing. Did you? I grew up on a diet of John Wayne. My dad, in black and white John Wayne movies, Sunday afternoons. You see, Liza, you've grown up in a country where you have more than 3 television channels. We had 3 with a fourth button, which I was really hoping one day would bring something alive, but it never did. When I was a child, just brought snow onto the screen. But yeah, I grew up watching with Dad, because that was one of his, I was going to say guilty pleasures, but it's not really a guilty pleasure, watching lots of John Wayne movies. Did you meet the great man in any of those lots?
I did not. And, I was so young at the time. And then, but we were acquainted with Telly Savalas. Yeah, my grandfather became friends with Telly Savalas. And whenever we would go to Los Angeles to visit, we would stay at the Sheraton Universal Hotel. And Telly Savalas's mom lived in the hotel. And he would come down and hang out with my grandfather. And yeah, so that's a memory.
She lived in the hotel. That's fantastic.
Lived in the hotel, or at least that's my memory. Maybe I've made that up, a fictionalized account of what a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old girl remembers. But I remember she was always there and at the restaurant or like having coffee with my grandmother, and then. So yeah,
I'll buy that. I've got to ask, and I won't ask anything quite so ridiculous as this again during the whole of our conversation. But did he walk around sucking lollipops?
Not to my memory.
Okay, right. Your work, your beautiful photography work, is a real blend of. There's lots of things here. There's documentary, there's travel, there's fine art. Whenever I have the good fortune to talk to a photographer who uses the word fine and art together next to each other, I always want to try and understand what their interpretation of fine art is.
That's such a great question. I would hardly call myself a fine art photographer. I really think that I've been fortunate to do something of everything in my career, and that's because I've been doing this for a long time. And so many photographers who are popular now, or might like the moniker of fame, which I often speak about how I don't think that's a real thing in this hyper-saturated visual construct. You've got a bubble, I've got a bubble, everyone has their own bubble. And so somebody might be famous in my bubble, or it might be well-known in your bubble, but that doesn't mean any other bubble knows about it, right? So fine art, I don't know that that's what I would call myself entirely, although I've had the beautiful opportunity to do some fine art things. Yeah. I think throughout my career, I've been more of a commercial photographer. And yet I see the world in a very artistic way because I grew up, my mother's an artist, and she took me to every museum she could ever expose me to. And I spent so much time studying art. I studied art history in Rome in college. So I guess the fine art in my work, if it exists, is during the commercial space. It's the bit of me that got to be at Art Basel this year, or the bit of me that puts my work into books, and that I would say is more of my fine art experience.
Did you say you studied in Rome?
I did, just for a semester.
Wow.
In college. Yeah.
What an incredible art history in Rome. I don't think I don't think it gets much better than that, does it?
I know. The class was so fascinating. It was called From Pagan to Christian in Ancient Rome. And I saw every single Bernini, every single Caravaggio. We went into the most hidden spaces, because art, when you're in Europe, as you are so fortunate to get to be in America, when you see art, it's in a home or a gallery or a museum. But in Europe, art is part of just the cultural landscape, and it's everywhere. And so Bernini and Caravaggio and Michelangelo, they're in hidden places. They had patrons. I wish we had patrons now. I wish we were in the Renaissance in that way, not in the plague and dirty way, but the having a patron as an artist kind of way. So it was amazing because we would go to a chapel or a cathedral or some kind of hidden rectory, and there would be this breathtaking Caravaggio. And I really fell in love and was transfixed with the drama of light. I think that's when I first started to pay attention to light.
I think we're very lucky. We are enveloped. You're right. We're enveloped by it or in it in Europe. I remember in particular, Budapest is coming back to me now, and a particular visit to. Suddenly there was a cave, and within this cave, there was all this beautiful art and sculptors. It is incredible, and sometimes I think we take that for granted in Europe.
I'm sure you do. I'm from wine country, and I often take this bucolic setting for granted until I'm somewhere else, and then all I want to do is get back home. So it's when you're in the middle of something, it's hard to recognize it for what it is, and that's why travel, as you know and as I know, is so vital to who we are as visual creators, as thinkers, because it puts us outside of our comfort zone, and it gives us a reflective quality where we can look back onto the place we came from with appreciation, or see why we've chosen to leave. Either way.
Well, I'm very lucky just to have returned from India, and we were using the word adventure for our adventures, our retreats, our journeys. But actually, I like the word travel. Travel it's this gift, isn't it? Finding yourself in places, in light, with people that you otherwise would never. Well, you just don't meet them through a Netflix doco, do you?
No, exactly. And I also find the more, maybe when I'm home, I'm focused on work or my routine or friends and things that are familiar. When I'm out in the world, I think that I am my best self because I am my most open self. And I experience travel, particularly as a photographer, as a voyeur. And when I'm looking, I'm also just open to what will present itself in front of me next. And that's so beautiful. When I'm home, I sort of expect what's happening next. Oh, the mailman's coming at this time, or I'm going to visit a person over here or do this project. But when I'm traveling, I have no idea what's happening. And I seem to be hyper available to any experience. Like a giant lizard could step in front of me, and it would just not faze me. I would think, how cool. This place has giant lizards.
I know exactly what you mean. So having you studied in Rome, I know it was for a semester, but also the cinematic studying, and you've ended up in working with stills photography. Just fill the gaps for me a bit. Just put some jigsaw pieces in place for me, so I understand how it went from that to working as a professional photographer.
An arduous road. Well, I've always been an image creator, and I mean always. When I was about 5 years old, I was handed a camera by a family friend, and we went to Eleuthera in the Bahamas. And I remember that I had a bag with me, like a sort of a canvas tote. And in that tote, there was my favorite stuffed animal and a camera. And I think part of it was growing up, being exposed to so much art. And then when I realized being a painter or somebody who draws, that's so hard. And that just I don't have the dexterity for that maybe, or I don't know, the patience. And working with the camera seemed like a natural extension of me, of my eye, of my hand. And so as I went into school, I just carried that on. I always took photographs, not very well, obviously, in the beginning. And when I was in college, I had the fortunate experience of having my own darkroom. And my darkroom was my way to have my own meditative thoughts.
I know we're dancing around your youth a little here, but I do know that school offered you a chance, or some chances, to take some interesting adventures with a camera. There's one in particular I love because I'm a bit of a fan of staring out the window of a train carriage.
Oh, the best experience in college probably was the summer between junior year and senior year. I worked on my senior thesis, which was a travel narrative. And I took Amtrak across America by myself, and I spent 5 weeks doing it. And I stopped in states where I had friends. I really got to see what America was like through the eyes of a camera. Yeah. And even then, when I was graduating, I still didn't know what I was going to be. And there was no one who said to me, well, you're already doing it. You can be a travel writer and photographer. You can be a journalist. And I struggled for a number of years with what will I be, because that's what I wanted to do. And I wasn't getting the sort of reinforced encouragement to do that. But I'm grateful for that, because what it did was force me to go into jobs that were more traditional and stable and businesslike. And through those jobs, I learned a lot about the aspect of what it's like to do marketing and PR. And I still use every bit of that today.
Well, let me fast forward again if I can, because I know you returned to school. The Rocky Mountain School of Photography, which sounds very exotic, to take an adult learning course, which gave you the basis of a skill set. But I think it was the opportunity to really learn at the coalface, as it were, when you joined a husband and wife team. Now, I think that really kick-started you.
So I learned like two very different ways of working. But I learned fundamental skills of how to run a business, how to get clients, how to talk with clients, how to present your work to clients. And so as I spent time with them working in their studios, I was developing my technical skills. I was learning the things that you can't learn in school, right? Like, what do you do if a client's unhappy with something? What do you do if the camera breaks? Those are things you don't generally learn in school. After a few years of working with them, I started to break off on my own and lived in a really small town in wine country called Calistoga. And I was given this tremendous opportunity to work for the small newspaper in town that we had probably a readership of 2,500 people. And because of that, I got a lot of assignments because I could write and photograph. And that really helped me understand how to be a photojournalist. And I think more than any experience in my life, being a photojournalist and being a wedding photographer at the time helped me understand how to light.
And light quickly as well.
Yeah, because you don't know. When you're a photojournalist and you're out on an assignment, you have no idea what is about to happen and you just have to wait. And it wasn't hard news. I did all of the public interest pieces, but I still had no idea what to anticipate. So you're just there and you have to get the shot and you have to get a good shot, So it's a great experience.
Well, we're going to come to your books shortly, but what do you think of yourself now as? Are you a writer? Are you a photographer? Are you because you wear so many hats?
I do. I'm a hybrid. People always are trying to put me in one box or another, but I do both, and I do them probably an equal amount. So it would be hard for me to separate that. My books are as much photo as they are writing.
And there's an enormous amount of them. What are we up to now? Was it 19? Is it 19 books now? I think it's 19, isn't it?
19, but I'm working on 20 and 21.
Well, so. I'm not sure many photographers would get anywhere close to 10, let alone 21. And a lot of these books are food, aren't they? To do with your food photography. Where did that come from?
So the food photography started because I had been doing the photojournalism and the portraits and the weddings, and a friend reached out and said that her agent was looking for a food photographer. And could I photograph cocktails for a book? And naturally, and it was a book with a Random House. And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely, I can. I had no idea how to do this. I'd never photographed a cocktail. I photographed wine, and when I was in photographing weddings.
Never say no. You just always say yes and figure it out later. Yeah,
you'll figure it out. And so I said, sure, of course I can do it. Yeah. And then quickly panicked and thought, no, I have no idea how to do this. So I had to figure it out. So I know a lot of chefs just because they're my neighbors or, I've worked with them at wineries, and people kindly helped me by making some cocktails for me. I photographed some cocktails for that book, did that book. Through that book, a lot of the people that I included in the bartenders started opening their own bars and restaurants as they became more well-known. And they all said, well, to the PR companies that would say to them, or Wall Street Journal or New York Times, well, you need somebody to photograph the food. And they say, oh, Liza can do it. I had no idea how to do that. And I said, oh yeah, I can do it. So my early food photography is terrible. I would never show it to anybody now, but I improved because I recognize, I think something I am very proud of, or that has worked well for me, is I have the ability to divorce myself from my work and to be able to look at it through someone else's eyes. So I can objectively look at my work and recognize when it's not good.
Are you hard on yourself?
Oh my God, I am the hardest. There is no one who ever needs to tell me I've done a bad job, because I will already be thinking I could have done this better.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with the books, you're not a chef. You like food, and don't we all like food?
Right.
But this has become the prolific part of your photographic adventure, hasn't it?
It has, and what I love most about food is not just the actual food or the eating part of it, but it's where does our food come from? Who's making it? What is the table like that it ends up on? What are the conversations that get created from sharing those meals? So to me, food is more than just a dish on a table. It's this whole story. And I think we can tell so much about culture by the way we eat, what we choose to eat, where we get the things that we eat. I'm
really interested in how people photograph food. And I've spoken with a number of photographers who shoot food. Some are hugely talented when it comes to lighting and using complex setups. And then some of the others are absolutely, everything is lit by God's own light. I think you fit somewhere in the middle here, because when I look at your work, I see some what look like quite technical pictures. They are sometimes. I definitely will. If I'm somewhere and it's beautiful and the light's gorgeous, I'm really happy. I think there is nothing better than natural light. However, if you're doing a food shoot, and for most people don't realize that to do really great food photography, you can get about 8 shots done in a day.
I mean, and that is if you are being sort of aggressive with your speed. And that's because of the styling and the prep and the cooking, et cetera, et cetera. So that's like, obviously, if you're at a restaurant, you can do more than that. But if you're doing a cookbook, 8 photos a day, or if you're working at Williams-Sonoma, which I did, 8 photos a day is the maximum pretty much that you can anticipate. So in order to guarantee that you can work at that speed, you have to create the light. But to create light for food photography, I want it to look real. I want it to look natural. And so that is very technical, because light that looks real is hard to make.
Over the footbridge. And Liza returns shortly for part 2 of our chat. Can I remind you of the one-word assignment, he says, moving it firmly up the agenda this week. Getting some pictures nicely trickling in for this now. But we do need a winner for last month, and I did say I'd do that this week, and boy, this was hard. Context is not as easy a word to work with as you might think, but I've the picture that I've gone for, which will be on the assignments page right at the top, is Per Berghaug's Norwegian Odyssey, as I might call it. You'll find it on the show page today. It's this immense picture of a majestic mountain. We're back to scale, you see, taken in the last month or so when the snows of your northerly staging post were still there, I would imagine, about to recede. The context is scale, I think. The scale of humanity compared to Mother Nature. As Per says, at first when listening to you and Jim Richardson, I found this month's assignment to be, well, somewhat of an obstacle. I mean, how to ensure that you have context in a photo. I found that so often context is actually outside the photo. It's a good point, actually, but then again, a challenge is exactly what it says on the tin, right? The photo is of a small collection of cabins in the middle of the Norwegian mountains. More specifically, the Fjellfell mountain. I'm trying to sound Norwegian here, Per. Mountain range, where I tend to spend a good deal of my time whenever I can. And behind these seemingly small cabins loom the mountains, framing the cabins. And if you look closely, you can spot a few people near to the cabins. A skier who reaches their destination for the day, I presume. So I think context here, yes, definitely, is scale, isolation, and the beauty of nature. Can you hear that in the background? That sort of heavy industrial noise, spoiling all the beautiful birdsong. Either that or a mammoth, great big train coming along the tracks any second. We're near to the side of the rails now. So a flask is on the way to you. One of the famous, not so famous flasks. Make sure you fill it with hot stuff. I did check the Fjellfell webcam and the website. There's 18% of the mountains still open to skiers, so it's still going as I speak anyway. So while I find some more peace and quiet, let's do the assignment. This is really going to test your creativity once more. I want you to think outside the box, outside the box, outside the box, he says with a glint in his eye, which when you hear the assignment, if you haven't heard it yet, might make perfect sense.
The Photowalk assignment.
Dennis, I have the privilege of knowing the word you're going to choose, and I have to say, it is not a word I was expecting. Go on, you do the word and surprise us.
Gear.
Why gear? Because usually, I get a nosebleed from that word.
And that's specifically one of the reasons why I chose it, to put you under stress. But also, I have come, I guess, it goes back to that Fujifilm t-shirt where they show that evolution, the Neanderthal, and then the photographer carrying all the gear, and eventually, holding an X100V or whatever it was.
That's it, yeah.
But I think a lot of us have been through this process, especially those who are probably on the Photowalk, of expansion of gear and contraction of gear. And where I am now with my physical problems, I need a small, light, but competent camera to record the documents that I want to create. And I think others are in the same place. And I take photographs, coincidentally, of my gear in specific settings, or gear that I have evolved or chosen for a specific task. And so I think taking a picture of some of your gear, or the minimum amount of gear that you can get away with,
Yes.
in a setting would be what I would like to see. I'd like to see what other people use in anger on a regular basis. You have to get the right bit of gear for the right project. Obviously, my heart diary, although some of it was shot with an Olympus, some of it was shot with a Nikon, some of it was shot with a Ricoh, the vast majority of it was actually shot with one or other version of an iPhone, because you can't exactly carry a lot of camera gear around in a hospital room and get away with it. HIPAA compliance and this, that, and the other thing. So you have to use the gear that works for the circumstances.
Well, that's the word for this month. The word is, you can say it.
Gear.
Did you see what I did there at the start? Think outside the box. Box, kit, box, gear, box, kit. I'll get my coat. Best of luck. Send your pictures to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. If you can, resize them to 2,500 pixels wide. You are an absolute legend, or legend, as we call it in our house. Otherwise, don't worry, send it full res, and I'll do the old heavy lifting for you. No watermarks or borders, but do include links to your social feeds, your website, your Flickr, your Glass. Send me the whole URL, please. That's really handy, since there's quite a lot of stuff to do when we do these show pages and assignment pages. The pictures and stories will go on the assignments page. Yes, send me some writing with it as well, if it helps add context. And some may well also feature on our Photowalk Instagram, which helps get more eyes on your work and helps our little community to grow here. I'll be sure to tag straight back to you, of course. There we go, there's a train. That's more the Pinstriped Express, though, that one, pup. So I have a story in a moment which combines spookiness, curiosity, and a slice of regret. There's a picture which you have to see on the show page that goes with that. I've been looking at this picture for a day or so now. And I have to say, you'll see it. Just go to the show page. No more spoilers. Stop now, Neil. Yes, all right. Before that letter, though, I'd like to share some thoughts about our wonderful supporter, arthelper.ai. Now, I'm at last getting my backside into shape in terms of, is that the right expression? Into shape, into movement, in terms of sharing some photographs, hopefully prints with the world that are born of travel, of my curiosity and more abstract stuff, which was helped actually by a trip to the Delhi Observatory, funnily enough, on the last day of our time spent in Delhi, in India this year. And I'd like to dabble in sharing them with the world. Now, I'm not expecting to be the next Peter Lick or anything. I will leave a link to Peter so you can see what a difference between he and me there is. But I am intrigued who might, with a capital M, like to see my foray into art. Although I haven't a clue where to start with, here comes a grown-up word, with marketing. Yes, that is a grown-up word, isn't it? I'm more of an artiste lovey. Sat on the streets of Montmartre, bemoaning my frugal artist life, and nursing a glass of Chateau Neuf de Fallover with 5 straws with my other Parisian artisan friends. But marketing is important if you want to sell prints and you want to understand how to do that. And here's somebody who can possibly help me. And I'm not talking about the sommelier.
Before we return to this week's show, my thanks to those who keep us walking each week, such as our patrons. You know who you are. And now arthelper.ai for the next few months. If you've ever thought about selling your photography online but haven't a clue where to start, I think Art Helper could probably help you, because it's made for people like us. Here's how it works. You upload a photo, magically and instantly, professional content is made for you, such as social media posts, email newsletters, even full Substack articles, all in your own voice. It can also generate hundreds of mock-ups for every image you upload, things like your work framed, so people get a real understanding of what your photograph could look like on their wall. It helps you connect with the right buyers and even suggests pricing based on your market. And unlike most AI tools, it has an art protection guarantee, which means something very important: your images are never used for AI training. Free to try, and Art Helper is giving our listeners a special deal. Go to arthelper.ai, use the code PHOTOWALK and get 30 days free of the pro version. I'll have a link on the show page. It's a great way to start selling your art or growing the business you already have. And thank you, arthelper.ai, for your belief in this show.
It's the Friday Photo Walk. Me with your letters. I've not made a lot of pictures actually while we're walking. It's a bit of a bleh day, really. I was expecting another really high contrasty, sunny, beautiful day, but it's turned into a kind of a bleh kind of day. A bit chilly as well. Well, let me get a sketchbook, since I'm saying we're out with our cameras. I am. Let me get a picture. Here we go. It's the path ahead. The title will be On an Otherwise Blurry Day. Path on a blurry day. Yeah, me with your letters, you with your cameras, having a chat about this thing that we love, photography. I have a Teach Me Street to share in the next week or so. Teach Me Street is a monthly feature about candid street photography with Valerie Jardin, where this year you get a chance to ask Valerie questions about the hows and the whys of the craft. I'm actually now looking for more pictures that you've made candidly in the streets for Valerie to constructively review with her decades of experience and knowledge, and any questions as well about street photography. If yours is read out, you'll receive an e-book of your choice from Valerie's vast library of releases. The cupboard is a bit bare at the moment for questions, so baton firmly passed. Send your questions to, and your pictures, 2,500 pixels wide if you can, please, to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Right, here is a story about regret. Regrets. I've had a, don't sing, Neil, and also a story of what strange things perhaps lie beyond a door or a window when we photograph them or look at them. It's from our good friend in America land, Bob Shonkoff. You know Bob, with the 1K and 2 Fs. That's the one. Hello, Neil. Having written back in January, I never expected to be back at this again, but then I listened to a discussion with Shannon Taggart when one word was mentioned that set the alarm bells off in my brain. Really? That word was orbs. You may recall from my previous letter how I've been developing a photo project around my insomnia, which is not yet a major motion picture. Over all the nights spent in my local downtown making photographs in the dead of night, Bob decided to, well, instead of lying awake in bed and getting frustrated, he'd go out and make pictures, safely, I might add, in the neighbourhood. Anyway, yes, as Bob says, over all the nights spent in my local downtown making photographs in the dead of night, there's only been one person I ever came face to face with. The picture for this, by the way, study it. It's on the show page. It was around 4 a.m. when I saw this shadowy figure just up the street who had their back to me. I approached slowly and cleared my throat so as not to startle the lone woman. She turned to me and quickly explained that she was waiting for the Starbucks to open. What, 4 a.m? Oh yes, even though it would be over an hour later, says Bob. Read the rest of the sentence, Neil. I then explained to her why I was out at this hour with my camera. I suppose that's a good idea because then you make people feel comfortable with the whole scenario. I mean, there you both are, one waiting for Starbucks, one photographing to relieve the anxiety about insomnia. And I'm just thinking, actually, this is like that interview I did with the the British photographer who photographed in the half light. Oh, what was his name? Hang on, let me do a bit of magic editing here. I'll look something up online and I'll get back to you seamlessly in less than a moment or 3.5. Did you notice the edit point? No, Neil, magic. This is magic. Simon Buckley, yes. Known for his evocative project titled Not Quite Light, where he photographed in Manchester and Salford in the transitional moments of dawn and dusk. I thought it was a fabulous idea. Do you remember, this is the bit I do remember, which is why I'm thinking of it after Bob mentioning the lone person that he met while he was out photographing, because do you remember that Simon met a woman one morning with a shopping bag who he had a full conversation with, and then when he turned his back, she mysteriously disappeared. I feel like we should have a da-da-da here, but that's what happened. So anyway, back to Bob. Sorry, Bob, it did remind me of that moment. The lone figure I met curiously asked if I'd ever been to that famous old western ghost town a few hours from where we were. I said, of course. Bodie, is that the one, Bodie? She said, no, that's not it, even though she couldn't recall the name. Anyway, she told me that she'd been there one night and had taken a photo herself using her phone through the window of an old saloon window. Oh, gosh, that takes guts, doesn't it? An old saloon window, you don't know what's the other side, and it's a haunted town, and you're there taking photographs. Oh, dear. And when she looked at the picture she'd made, she said she saw orbs. Then she looked me straight in the eye, with a very odd look, I might add, and said, then the orbs just disappeared from my picture. What, from a still? It must have been the bears, she said, at which point I smiled, told her to have a nice day, and I calmly moved on. So I simply continued walking along looking for more photographs to make, when a few minutes later, I noticed some holiday lights up on a tree that were reflected in the leaded glass window of a bar, or should we call it, for the context of this story, a saloon. Anyway, I made the photograph. The next day, I uploaded the image, and there, in the window, appeared to be an eye looking right back at me. The image is attached as proof. I couldn't get it out of my mind, so I went back and peered through the window, but there was nothing remotely looking like an eye. I returned again, this time going inside, but again, never found anything. I regret, says Bob, that I didn't, there's the regret bit, that I didn't pursue the conversation with the woman that I met. It's amazing how bold one can be when they think about something they should have done, but didn't. Cheers, from Bob Shonkoff. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh, Neil, come on, that's Bob Shonkoff photoshopping something. He's gone all AI on us. But I'd say hold your horses and drink your milk. Bob the unbothered, lord of the leisurely stroll at 4 a.m, is not that sort of man. I think I can vouch for him. I know this through all the letters I've received from him. So do take a look at the picture. And what is that eye, eh? Or rather, who does that eye belong to? You have to see that picture. You really do. And I'm not kidding here, Bob. This is art. It really is. Are you going to shoehorn in some arthelper.ai mention here, Neil? Oh, I don't see why not. Do you need to market it, Bob? He says, could we have a glint in his eye noise? Is there a sound effect I can edit in? Glint in his eye. Do you need some help, Bob, with this for marketing? See, there we go. Glint in eye sound, sort of. In 2026, we have 2 new life travel plans for you and your cameras. Let me get poetic for a moment, because I'm proud of this one. To travel is to chase light in new languages. I sat down, thought about this. It's waking up somewhere that smells different, sounds different, feels very, very different, and letting those differences shape the stories that you bring home. And for us, it's all about the photographs that we bring home, isn't it? What we frame, perhaps, put on the mantelpiece. Certainly, what we never stop thinking about, and in terms of myself, never stop talking about. Well, in 2026, we're making plans for Kolkata and Varanasi in March, and Mongolia with the eagle hunters in September. Right, Pup, step to the side just a little bit. We've got somebody hurtling along, as I said yesterday. Not quite lycra clad, but it's one of those, I'm going as fast as I want kind of cyclists. There we go. Out the way, otherwise you'll be flattened. Come over here. Morning. Morning. No worries. There we go. Good boy. At least you're not one of those dogs that chases bikes. I remember coming along this path myself, being chased by a few dogs. Get off! So yeah, 2026, some super travel plans. Kolkata and Varanasi, India in March, Mongolia September, with a new printing retreat in Scotland in June. Haven't quite put everything together for that just yet, but we are up to half full in India, if all the deposits now come in. So here is a taster of the travel and the roads that lie ahead for you and I.
There are travels, and then there are stories you live through your lens. Join me for 9 unforgettable days in India, travelling from the poetic chaos of Kolkata to the spiritual heart of Varanasi, a photographic adventure that weaves together light and ritual and human connection. We begin in Kolkata, where early morning street walks lead us through former colonial alleyways, flower markets, and wrestling pits by the Ganges. We ride in those famous vintage yellow taxis, meet the makers in Kumatuli's Potter's Lanes, and capture life in motion at railway stations and markets that never seem to sleep. Then we move to Varanasi, ancient, haunting, and utterly magnetic. We drift down the Ganges at sunrise. We witness firelit aartis as the city chants into dusk, and walk through alleyways steeped in time. There are quiet moments too, watching a sadhu in reflection, youth at play on the sandbanks, and the stark contrast of life in the brickfields, where labour and repetition form a rhythm all of their own. These industrial plains speak to resilience, an unspoken strength that hums just beneath the surface of this sacred city. Each day is built to sharpen your eye on this trip, deepen your story, stir your creative souls. This isn't just a photography tour, it's travel that becomes part of your photographic life story, etched in light, colour and feeling. And I'd love to share it with you. Go to the website, photowalk.show, look for India 26, and you can register your interest there.
All the details will be on the website. Just look for the tab, India 26. And you can read the itinerary that we have. It's very exciting, I have to say. Over the last couple of years, we've been making, we've been doing this for a good few years, because I will count Scotland here, because that's it's a major adventure for those that have travelled from Australia, Canada, and America, and Switzerland, and shall I say Germany? I'm going to be in trouble now if I forget a place where somebody came from. But we've had some wonderful Scottish adventures. Yes, we have. But there's some pictures over the last couple of years that I was looking at Lynn Fraser's photographs in particular that she made in West Africa last year. And I said to Lynn, my word, we did a lot of stuff, didn't we? She said, yes, that's why I don't call your adventures retreats, because they are simply not. No, they're not. They're adventures, full-on adventures, and I'll proudly declare that. India this year was that, and I was looking back through my pictures the other day and thinking, oh, we did that, and then we did that, and then that, and then that. So Kolkata and Varanasi, well, there'll be pictures in India, but there won't be pictures of the same place, certainly not with the adventures that we're intending to take. So Another chapter in life, definitely. Right, we left off in part one of my conversation with Liza Gershman talking about food photography. Part two starts with advice on that topic.
And the most complex part of photographing food, I think, is learning how to deal with the height of food. Shapes of plates, height of food, what's photographed top down. How do you deal with that nature of food?
I think of food more like a face. And so the way that you are talking about it, I think, is this something, I do think about the height all the time. And I think, is this something that is it tall? Is it, am I lighting it from which side? Somehow it speaks to me like it's a person, a portrait.
Do you prefer working solo or as part of a team on these shoots?
Oh gosh, I love a team. I'm so grateful anytime I have a chance or a budget to work with a team. When you get to have a producer take care of all of those producing items, and you get to have a food stylist do their most beautiful work, and somebody to help with the props, and a photo assistant and a lighting assistant. I'm so grateful when I get to work with a team. If I work alone, that's fun. I like the freedom of traveling and having one camera, one lens, feeling very, Nat Geo about it. That image of the solo photographer out on the road with just their camera. I love that experience. When I'm working on a project like a book, I really see the value in a team and having the help. I mean, it takes a village to make a gorgeous image come to life, particularly when it's a food photograph.
In terms of the travel, I'm going to have to remember the number now, but I think is it 47 countries or is it, no, 55 countries, 47 states. That's it. It wouldn't have worked the other way around, of course. But moving from the food photography to travel photography, although I know the two are obviously sometimes very closely linked, it's been a very important part of your life, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's been great, and I hope I get to do more. We never know how much we'll get to do, and it's definitely been a huge priority of my life, and I've sometimes taken the projects just for where they've taken me or not done the job that will pay as much because I wanted to go somewhere interesting.
I think for many people, travel photography and telling stories on the road would be of these fantastic places would be almost the holy grail. I know it probably would be for me. What has it blessed you with? Understanding cultural sensitivities is one thing I would place firmly at the top of the list of things I've learned through having a camera traveling.
I would say some of the most important things I've learned in life all came from travel, most of them. And every idea that I ever had about life was mixed and stirred and shaken upside down when I lived in Kenya. I had this idea that logic was something that was innate to humans. And then I really what I watched was an experience that made me think, oh, logic is learned. And that is not something that this specific, experience is teaching me. Everything was illogical at all times. Everything, getting a photocopy would sometimes take a half a day. And it was like, okay, the way I do things is not the way everyone does things. And that was so important. And the way the world looks, when you stand at the edge of the Rift Valley, at least for me, I felt like I'm part of this very insignificant human experience in this gigantic ecosystem. And here we are just on top of the earth, but we're not really of it, or maybe we are, but it humbled me in a way that no other experience ever has. And the way that I expand my thinking expands my visual thinking. Don't you find that when you travel, when your mind expands and your consciousness expands and you look at people, you start to look at them in a very different way. When I hear people talk about the concepts of like poverty, and I hear them speak about it without actual compassion, or, they're doing charity work, but they're not really engaging with it on an emotional level. I think we'll just go travel a little bit, because you will realize the extraordinary privilege you have. And that gives you gratitude, and gratitude gives you everything else.
This feels today like a real introduction to talking further, picking a subject rather than an overview of the Eliza How Do We Get Here story. But Kenya's a place I know you're very fond of. You've mentioned it already. But the continent of Africa is such a complex yet beautiful place. I suspect it is the continent, not just one part of it with your well-stamped passport that's drawn you.
The whole continent. I got to go to the gorillas in 2019, and that was an exceptional experience. And going to Rwanda, a country that not that long ago, their entire country was involved in this horrid genocide. Yet people are able to work together, live together, be together. That was something that I still don't know if I can wrap my mind around, but it was beautiful to see and observe.
I suppose that those sort of experiences definitely change your perceptions of life, don't they, and what's important, as you suggested.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate them because then I don't get as caught up. I don't, as much as I think a designer handbag is beautiful, I don't need one. And whenever I think about going to maybe purchase one, I think, well, that's a whole trip somewhere, and I'd rather go on the trip.
You've worked with some fantastic brands. You mentioned Williams-Sonoma already, Airbnb. How do you maintain I've always wondered how you maintain a personal style or a signature style when you're working to a commercial brief. It perhaps says more about me than it says about the person that I'm ever asking this question of, because I suspect I'm just not very good at working to commercial briefs.
Well, I think that my commercial work looks like what my clients want it to look like, and it looks like their style. And then my personal work just looks like me. And I spent so much of my young years studying other photographers. It took me a long time to create my own style. And my favorite quote from any artist is from Pablo Picasso. And he said that by the time he was the age of 12, he could paint like the masters, and it took him the rest of his life to paint like himself.
I've not heard that one. I'll remember that. So when a commercial client approaches you, what are the things that you need to know about them so that it aligns with them and perhaps also with your own creative ethos?
Well, now in my career, I'm doing more projects that are my creative ethos. And that's fantastic. I think when a commercial client, when I was in my earlier career and I did projects that were very commercial and they were not at all my artistic style, an art director would hand me an aesthetic sheet and I would follow it. And thankfully, a lot of the brands that I worked with were brands like Williams-Sonoma is my style. That is my taste. And when I was working there, I was the senior director of photography and I did all of the e-commerce, and I was a big part of creating the e-commerce style guide. So I got to play into this is what I like, but it's also their aesthetic is my aesthetic, which is very helpful. I do have an edgier part of my aesthetic as well. And so that was a struggle for me. For years, I felt like I couldn't show any of my kind of darker, edgier work. And my website became very light and fluffy. So now I'm thinking, what is my next transformative moment and how do I show the world? What do I want my work to look like in the next iteration of me? And I'm not entirely sure. I'm still thinking through that. I think it's time to go on some great trip and get re-inspired and see textiles and art and architecture and think through who am I as a visual creator and not be afraid, right? It's like I've created this body of work and it has a specific aesthetic. It's light, it's colorful, but I'd like to do some work that's a bit darker, moodier. And would people appreciate that? I don't know. It's a risk, naturally, and thankfully when I do a book, so recently my next book is so fun. I live in the town of Healdsburg, and the Healdsburg Farmers Market has asked to partner with me to do a book, and we are celebrating our food agriculture in our town. So back to food always. And as you saw, and we're focusing on everything from, it's sort of follow the lettuce, right? It's everything from the seed to the table, the farmers and the farms, the community, the restaurants, the celebrated chefs. Thankfully, I live in a place that has this extraordinary food culture with some pretty heavy hitting chefs, a lot of Michelin stars just within a stone's throw from me. And I've been thinking a lot about what will the aesthetics of the book look like and how do I want to do that? And is it kind of like my county fair book, which was very classic American and nostalgic, or is it something a bit more interesting and edgy? And I'm wading through that in my mind. And I keep thinking about Morocco, which makes no sense to me about why is Morocco coming into my visual landscape or my mental thinking about this project. But there's something there. There's something maybe I need to go take a trip quickly and, explore something a little bit different, deeper, darker.
Giving back is such an important part of many photographers' careers. How do you, and you've sort of touched on this, the signature look that we're always chasing, the holy grail of our signature look. And it's so difficult to know what a signature look is, what makes us different to another photographer. And perhaps that's been made even harder by having just this wash of images across social media that I think completely confuses most photographers, because you're immersed in too much other work.
And also I find that, there are things that are trending. Sometimes a lot of photographers will do the look that's trending, and that's how they'll get work. And that's one way to do it. And maybe a smarter version of me would lean in and do that. But I think that lasts for a few years.
Well, this is an interesting one then. While we're talking about social media, if you lost every follower and you had to start from scratch, how or what would you focus your energy on?
Well, I'm not great at social media, and I'm aware that has prevented me from getting some of the projects I would really like. So every year I give myself a big pep talk about social media, and I've just given it to myself 2 weeks ago.
Okay. And what did you decide? What did Liza say?
What I said was, if I wanted projects that fell into this XYZ bucket, I needed to become very serious about social media, start making reels in an edited, curated way, blah, blah, blah. And then I proceeded to not do any of that. So I think what matters to me is living the kind of life that I like, and having a private life is important to me. Living a social media life is not really appealing, and I do know I must embrace some of it. I would encourage any photographer who's just starting out to lean all the way into social media. Am I going to? TBD. Let's see what happens in 2025.
I think I'm going to come back onto the phone with you in 2 months' time, and I'm going to say, Liza, how's the social media going? And you're going to say, pretty much where we were last time we left off, but I am in Kenya, so I'm having a good time.
You are totally nailing exactly.
So
You summed me up.
I'm not sure it'll matter. We always end with a question, and I'm really interested in how you're going to answer this. It's a very simple question, and it is, what is your why?
I do this because I can't not do it. If there were anything else, when I was a professor, which I was associate chair of photography for Savannah College of Art and Design. And I've taught workshops for Canon, and I do mentor. And what I always tell emerging photographers is, if there is anything else that you could do or might do or have a slight interest in doing, go do that. This is not the thing to do if there's, this is a great hobby. If this is how you want to make a living where you can guarantee that you can eat, guarantee there's a roof over your head, you have to want this so much that you can't imagine anything else. And that when you do other things, you're still thinking about this. And the idea of not doing it keeps you up at night. And I think that's the only way to do this. And if somebody knows a different answer, I would love to hear that. But for me, it's just because there's not another choice. And I love other parts of my career. At this point, I plan events, and I love teaching, and I love styling. I can't not take a photograph if I'm somewhere. And now I have this handy phone like we all do. I mean, I have 97,000 photographs on my iPhone. I'm always taking a photograph, and that's just who I am.
My thanks to Liza Gershman. Thank you, Liza. What a pleasure to talk with you. Links to Liza's work will be on the show page today, of course. And I mentioned Liza actually in an Instagram reel. Oh, I made a reel. You made a reel, Neil? Yes, I did make a reel, Neil. The other day I got a message from somebody about the beard, which seems to have caused a whirl of, horror, stroke, surprise, stroke, mild indignation, possibly indigestion. But I got this mail which asked a simple question in 6 words. Is that thing a permanent fixture? Like it was a Star Trek tribble attached to my face. You can look up the tribbles. Or I might find a film, who knows. There must be a film on YouTube about the Tribbles, surely. But yeah, I didn't realise it was quite so much the shock. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and want to walk a little bit further together, then that's what the Extra Mile edition is all about. Another pinstriped express going by in the background. Just about hear it through the trees and the reeds to my left as I walk along the path. We're up to number 139 in these Extra Mile editions. I know. You go the extra mile for me, so I go the extra mile for you and make an additional episode every single week. And something that I think is rather wonderful about this extra mile, the extraness about it, is that often you appear as the stars of this show, or the extra milers appear as the stars of your own show. And this week we have extra miler Mike Miller, who's been a long friend of the show now, and he's been working on this incredible history project. It's a photo history project, and I have to say I've learned such a lot through it. So I talked to, can you hear the cuckoo? Now, I did try to get this. You're going to stop again, aren't you? Go on. Sing for me. It will the moment I walk away. It's beautiful. I love cuckoos. Must have just gone the other way quickly. He's cuckooing along the way, unless that's his mate. Yeah, so Mike talks about the history of photography. He's been making this tremendous history project, which we talk about in our shooting of the breeze. And also, Liza Gershman is back for 3 more stops. Here is a taster of what is waiting for our extra milers, our patrons, right now.
On this week's Extra Mile,
Nadar of Paris. Like, he was the Annie Leibovitz or Richard Avedon of today. And anybody who was a who's who in French society, be it politicians or scientists or business people, you had to have your picture taken by Nadar. But he was also quite innovative. So he was the first person to take an aerial photograph. He took his camera in his darkroom up into a balloon and made aerial images. And he actually had a problem with the turbulence from the burning of the gas to keep the balloon afloat. He had to develop something to keep the camera steady for the couple of seconds that it was in the air, or he would get blurry images. So he was first in the air. He was also the first underground photographer. So he took his camera into the catacombs of Paris and made images there.
Well, my friend Michael Shapiro, who is an author, wrote a brilliant book called The Creative Spark, in which he interviews many, many, many well-known creatives and asks them poignant questions about how do you find your creativity? How do you recognize it? What do you do when you think it's gone away, et cetera, et cetera? So I might give that.
If you go to the website and follow the link that says Extra Mile, or the orange support button in the top right-hand corner, you get to listen to, you get to learn more about the Extra Mile and what it actually is. So I still think there's some folk that think, or don't know rather, what's this all about? So all is explained on a special website page for you. If you go to the website, you get to listen to the first 5 minutes of the show for free. And then if you'd like to join up, you get a huge archive of additional shows that we've done whilst walking. And some that were studio-based. I did a diary feature for quite a while as well. Right, our PS to the show is to come. But before that, we need a play-out song just to make some final frames to. I've been photographing the sun as it started to dare to show its face. I'm just appearing from behind this cloud. I know. You're doing your best, aren't you? It is warming up slightly. Yes, our PS to the show is to come, but before that we need a play-out song. And I use these play-out songs really just as I think this song's a fairly whimsy note in many respects, or whimsy tune. And I use it just to walk with, make some more pictures, to think about, to digest, see, Food Link, digest what's been said today. And this is from Lewis Island, and it's called Falling.
You're right, all night under the covers. Your place my place, it doesn't matter. No one has to know. We'll keep it on the low. Round and round we go. Falling for you. Feeling your skin, the night's getting colder. Falling, holding, it's getting better. No one has to know. We'll keep it on the low. Round and round we go. Falling for you.
That's Fallin' from Lewis Island. A few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thank you to you, and I mean this. If you're an extra miler or you're thinking, I think I'd like to support the show and become a part of our extra mile team, I really do genuinely appreciate you being there and being part of all this, because without you, honestly, there's a lot of trains this morning. Another one. Without your support, without you being there on these walks, really, we would not have a show. And I genuinely mean that, because it takes 3 or so days to really put this show, make this show, edit this show, put it often more, to be honest. Once all the emails are answered, guests recorded, and I know Neil, world's smallest violin, about to play. So your support is very much appreciated. It really is. But a few mentions for others that smooth the voyage. Neil Ford, who looks after IT, he can help you too, you know. If you drop me a message, I'll link you two together, so I will. Also to Andrea Gilpin, who looks after Instagram, Michael Mixon, who helps with the show research, and Kelly Mitchell, who is a whiz behind Facebook. Right, a postscript for the show. I mentioned him at the start, so coming round full circle seems pertinent now to mention him again. And though, yes, a part of today's title was really just a very incy section of my chat with Liza today, this idea about yes, it's had a profound effect on my thinking this week. I've done a few things that perhaps we'll talk about in the weeks to come where yes has been involved. That's been my week this week. So a quote from the British writer, the humorist, the broadcaster, a very clever man, Danny Wallace. I mentioned his book, Yes Man, where he talks about a period during which he committed to saying yes to every opportunity that came his way, leading to some very unexpected adventures and definitely some personal growth. The book's success, as I said, had a 2008 film adaptation starring Jim Carrey. Beyond Yes Man, Danny's authored several other books, including Join Me and Friends Like These. His work often explores themes of human connection and spontaneity. And my goodness, spontaneity is really important for what we do photographically, isn't it? And the risks with the small R's and the big R's that we take. Anyway, this is the PS, the postscript for this week, and it's about yes. The fact is, said Danny, saying yes hadn't been a pointless exercise at all. It had been pointful. It had the power to change lives and set people free.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.